The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. We are recording.
All right. Thanks,
Very good. Thank you, Roland. All set?
We're ready to go.
You want to click the red numbers and we'll make it official. There you go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
World traveler and philanthropist. I am neither. Anyway, every day I get up and do a search of news that relates to energy and climate change, and when I find something that looks interesting to me, I put together a 50 to 55 word synopsis with a link to the original article, and that gets put into a group of 10 to 15 articles which are posted daily on my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And you can go there. We will talk about news from the last week. If you go to the blog and click on the calendar date, or just scroll down to might be going through 100 articles. Click on the calendar date.
There's a search function there, right? Isn't there?
There is,
Yeah.
but you know.
I'm sure our viewers are very well adept at that.
Our viewers are highly educated, very sophisticated people, far more sophisticated than we are. Anyway, if you go to the blog, geoharvey.com, and you go to the date on the calendar that we mentioned, you will be able to find on that date's entry the articles that we talk about. Today, we're recording this on the 22nd of February, which is a Thursday morning, and we are starting our news with the 15th of February, which is also a Thursday morning, and we're starting with an item from Green Tech Media.
How demand flexibility could boost renewables and save Texas billions. Well, it says Texas, but it could save billions. We'll get to it. It's a new term to me, but.
What's a new term?
Demand flexibility.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Rocky Mountain Institute released a report on demand flexibility equation modeled on the grid of Texas, America's version of an islanded energy market. The results indicate that the investment in demand flexibility would more than pay for itself in reduced curtailment, flattened peaks, and power plants never built.
Well, as I was saying, I hadn't heard the term demand flexibility.
Yeah.
But it's a concept that we will be hearing more and more of.
I think that's true.
Well, I'll give you a quick definition of it from the article.
Oh, okay, yeah, good.
It's Rocky Mountain Institute's term for the capability of water heaters, air conditioners, plug-in electric vehicles, and other loads to provide a massive set of benefits to the grid, if they're smart enough to handle it.
Right.
You may have heard it referred to as the Internet of Things.
Yes.
There's going to be all sorts of things that are smart enough to connect to the grid and disconnect when needed and stuff like that.
Right.
This is the future.
Yes, there's no question in my mind of that. By the way, what is meant by Texas being islandable or islanded, there are 3 huge grids in the 48 contiguous states of the United States.
And one of them is Texas alone.
Yeah, it's not all of Texas. It's almost all of Texas.
Yeah.
And the other 2 are the eastern part and the western part. But the Texas grid stands alone, and of course that whole grid can go down fairly easily in the event of a major hurricane or something like that.
They can island it.
They can island it, and it has no effect on the east or the west, and the east or the west going down has no effect on it directly, because there's very little flow of electricity among these 3 grids.
Well, some idea of the scope of this situation is this 4.2 million water heaters in
Yes.
America. 3.9 million ceramic brick heat storage systems. I didn't know that. Okay.
Stop for a second, Tom. And how many water heaters were there?
4.2 million.
Okay, 4.2. And how much is each of those going to carry as a load? Do you think they'd be 1,000 watts each, maybe?
I was going to say a kilowatt, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it would be 4.2 gigawatts if they all drew at the same time.
Which they don't, fortunately.
They don't, but if they did, it would be the equivalent
Yeah.
of 4 major new nuclear power plants. And if they all kicked on at the same time, actually, if they all kicked on at the same time, my bet is that the grid would go down. Because
I
you'd
would take that
blow
bet.
breakers all over the place.
Everything would go down, yeah.
But with a grid that's smart, you can have the grid just say, hey, we're overloaded. Please don't heat your water right now.
Well, it's starting to happen in Vermont right now.
Yes, indeed.
With the right kind of appliances and your own permission in advance, Green Mountain Power can turn on and off your water heater.
Right.
And they compensate you for doing this.
Yes.
One way or another.
Yeah.
You know, it's
And in a sense, it's under your control because it's actually you can
you can withdraw permission.
yeah
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
fly.
You are controlling it.
Yeah,
They're controlling the demand, but you can turn around and say no.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I've got to do my hair tonight. I got to leave my water heater running.
There you go.
And as a takeaway here, the benefits of smart technologies outweigh the costs.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty
Well,
evident.
it's a type of efficiency. It's a type of
It
efficiency.
is really, absolutely.
And efficiency is our least expensive power. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
And we got a picture here coming up.
Do we? No, we had a picture. The picture of Texas wind power, which went with our first article.
I didn't even have that one up.
You didn't. Well, there it is. Wind turbines in Texas, all kinds of them, including one little cranky one that's left over from the 1930s. And that water tower that you see there is, in fact, a water tower that was used.
By the little wind turbine
the little
right
wind,
next to it.
yeah,
Yep.
the little wind turbine would pump water. It didn't make electricity. It just pumped water into that water tower, which was there so the cattle could have water to drink.
You see a lot of them in old Western movies.
Yep, you do.
Absolutely.
Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
Those living close to wind turbines generally view wind power positively.
Lawrence
That's a
Berkeley,
surprise, or is it?
and not to me, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory published preliminary analysis from a 3-year study using survey data from 1,705 randomly selected individuals who lived within 5 miles of modern wind turbines, reflecting distance and attitudes. The findings highlight a generally positive attitude regardless of how closely they lived to a wind turbine. The ones who lived closest to a wind turbine were more than twice as likely to think of wind turbines positively as they were to think of them negatively.
They're not so frightened.
Yeah,
I mean, there's people out there trying to spread fear, you know, and then they listen to this every day and say, no
Well,
big deal.
I talked to a woman in Greensburg, Kansas. I said, how does it feel to live in in a city that has wind turbines right in people's backyards?
Yeah.
And she said, where are you calling from? And I said, Vermont. And she said, we don't have problems around here.
Well, there's a quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that suggests living near a wind turbine is unpopular. But that's just what it is, anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
It's not standing up to reality.
Well, anecdotal evidence, you know, you can produce all kinds of anecdote, and it may be true. You know, there may be, you can produce, I remember somebody saying, well, people near wind turbines get sick. Where does that come from? Well, there were 2 guys who rented a cabin near a wind turbine for a weekend, and they both got sick.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, I can think of a few reasons they might have got sick that have nothing to do with wind turbines. Where did they get their water is a big one.
That's a goodie.
Yeah, okay. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move
Okay.
on.
We have
Maybe
another
got the
picture here.
Huh?
Yep, and this is
This picture
from
would have applied to either one, I guess.
yeah, Irish Tech News.
Sea Fuel Project. Sea Fuel is the name of a name of the project.
Yeah.
To use hydrogen as a renewable resource for transportation.
And I'm seeing this come up more and more and more often as I look at the news. NUI Galway has officially launched the Sea Fuel project. It aims to use hydrogen as a renewable resource across the Atlantic area to power the local transport fleet of cars and support the shift toward low carbon economy. The project will be piloted in the Canary Islands, Madeira, which is part of Portugal. I think the Canaries are part of Spain, aren't they?
I think so.
And the Aran Islands off Western Ireland. And
which are very primitive part of Ireland.
yeah, well,
It's the last place in Ireland where almost everybody speaks Irish.
which means that it's, in a sense, kind of the last place in Europe when you're going west.
Yeah, you got it there. By the way, NUI Galway is
Yeah.
a college. It's a university.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for
National
telling me that.
University of Ireland.
There you go. It's kind of like
It's a good
UCLA,
university too.
you know, University
Yeah,
of California
yeah,
at Los Angeles. What's happening here is they're taking wind power, and of course you have this thing called curtailment. If there's too much power on the grid, you can't, you know, what they do is they just shut down the wind turbines. But what they're doing now is instead of shutting down the wind turbines, they're using them to produce hydrogen.
Bingo. It's another form of storage.
It's a form of storage. And if
A
you've got
battery, if you
hydrogen,
will.
yeah, if you've got hydrogen, you can use it for all kinds of things. Okay, we are up to February 16th, which is a Friday, with an item from Vox.
From Vox.
Vox.
Trump's top spy just contradicted the White House's line on climate change.
Yeah. The top U.S. intelligence official warned Congress about the threat of abrupt climate change, abrupt in quotes here, despite Trump administration efforts to drive climate out of the national security discussions. The director of national intelligence submitted written testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee identifying climate change as a significant concern.
Well, this is interesting. We'll call this guy the DNI. He warned Congress that climate change could cause upheaval.
Upheaval. Yeah.
And this guy oversees 17 intelligence agencies, including the CIA and the NSA.
Who ever heard of them?
Trump himself has mocked global warming on Twitter, and his administration officials regularly dismiss well-established climate science and are removing climate change from policy discussions.
Yeah. Would you?
What's going on here?
Who are you going to get your information from? Are you going to get it from Scott Pruitt, who says, well, climate change may be happening, but it might be good?
Yeah.
Or are you going to get it from Stephen Hawking, who says, you know, if we don't stop this, we're going to have a climate on Earth that'll be similar to what they have on Venus, which means you can't live there. And or are you going to take it from somebody who's kind of in between those two? I think Stephen Hawking knows a great deal more about science than Scott Pruitt.
He knows more than I do.
Stephen Hawking?
He knows more than I do.
Really? Wow. I think I should fire you and get a new engineer.
Well,
Okay.
I think we got another picture coming up.
We do. And this is another offshore wind contraption. Look at that. I posted this at the Green Energy Times website for the day. What day was this? February 16th. And Nancy Ray Mallory, who's the editor of Green Energy Times, sent me an email saying, couldn't you have posted something less ugly?
Well, in this particular case, they call that a substation, but it seems to be a lot more than that. It looks like there's living quarters on it.
I would think that there's living quarters on that. The top part of that, which is kind of ball-shaped, I think has got to be at least 6 stories tall.
Well, what seems to be going on is the cables from the turbines are going to this thing.
Yep, which is a substation.
And then there's all sorts of transformers and stuff in there.
Yep.
And it's connected to further cables that are bringing this stuff all
onto shore.
Onto the shore.
And that means that there's always something going on there. Somebody has got to be there in case something goes wrong. And that person can't be alone. You've got to be a crew of some sort. I have no idea how many people live on that thing. I did try to find out.
Well, the article's an interesting thing because It's talking about a shared transmission. Well, you're going to read it.
Yeah.
USOK's offshore grid plan.
Yes, federal regulators are allowing Anbaric development partners to move ahead with a shared transmission system for offshore wind off the coast of Massachusetts. The U.S. company plans to solicit customers and sell transmission rights to the 2 gigawatt to 2.4 gigawatt Massachusetts ocean grid. The three developers have already hold leases off the coast. So what they're going to do is they're going to have multiple wind farms attached to structures of this type.
Exactly.
And
And these guys are going to control the cables.
right. And basically,
And rent the cables out.
Yeah, the amount of power that's going to be going through these things, and I don't know how many of them they're talking about building. It might be just one, but I doubt it.
No, they're going to need more than one.
Yeah, it's 3 to 4 times what Vermont Yankee was producing.
It is significant.
So it's 2 big nuclear power plants. Anyway, there it is.
I guess what's different about this is that the transmission lines are going to be owned by a third party
Yes, and
rather than owned by the generators themselves.
right.
And they do that on land. I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah.
not that unusual.
Yep. So this is going to be ISO Atlantic
Yeah.
Ocean.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It is, really.
Okay.
Okay.
Our next item is from Digital Journal, still February 16th.
Market barriers. I'm wondering what I should be up there for. I don't need the picture, but that's okay. I'm spacing out.
Okay.
Market barriers removed for energy storage technology.
This item
This is
kind
an
of
important one.
It's important, but it did actually surprise me because I didn't expect that this was necessary. U.S. regulators have removed all market barriers to electric storage, so operators can dispatch power from multiple storage systems, including batteries. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has completed a ruling that allows energy storage companies to directly compete against power plants in the wholesale power markets.
We've talked about the virtual utilities.
Yes.
Which is basically energy storage or
Yeah.
somehow or another accumulating energy
Yeah.
and redirecting it.
Right. Okay, we are up to Saturday, February 17th, and we have an item from
Picture here.
Clean Technica. Not yet. It's after this.
Okay.
Okay?
I think this one is
I can-
appropriate. But
I could put it up if
put
you
it
want.
up. Yeah,
there it
put
is.
Put it up.
Anyway, this is from Clean Technica.
Pretty picture anyhow.
It is.
High Wind Scotland, world's first floating wind farm, is performing better than expected.
According to the project developer Statoil, which is, I think it's Norwegian, isn't it? It's a Norwegian oil company.
I believe it is, yes.
The
Yep.
world's first floating wind farm, High Wind Scotland, has been generating electricity at a level that surpasses expectations through its first 3 months of production, where bottom-fixed offshore wind farms generate about 45% to 65% of the rated capacity. High Wind Scotland has averaged 65%.
This is kind of a pleasant surprise for these developers, isn't it?
It is, and it means that just in terms of the percentage of capacity that this thing is doing, it's comparable to a coal-burning power plant.
Mm-hmm.
So, is intermittency a concern here? Any more concern than it would be with coal?
I don't think so at all.
It's a different sort of thing. My guess is that these plants probably produce power almost 100%. Well, I know because I've seen other news media. Let's say these plants produce electricity almost 100% of the time, which coal-burning power plants don't.
Mm-hmm.
Coal-burning power plants, the generators run into faults and the coal plant stops and the spot price of electric power goes to $100 a kilowatt hour and weird things happen. But these things are going to be producing, not intermittently, they're going to be producing in a
fairly regularly.
But it's going to be variable amounts.
Well, they've been operating since this fall.
Mhm.
They've already encountered and survived Hurricane Ophelia. They survived Storm Caroline.
Yep.
And the waves that they have withstood have been in excess of 25 feet.
Yeah.
That's a good-sized wave.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah.
The farm was shut down during the worst of the winds for safety reasons.
Yeah.
But the turbines automatically resumed operation afterwards.
This is typical of wind turbines. You'd think that they would suffer horribly. You know, Hurricane Sandy happened, and what is the wind turbine manufacturer here in Vermont? There's one up in Barrie, Northern Wind Systems. Is that
I
the
don't
name
know
of
the name of it.
Something
I've heard
like
of
that.
it, but it. You know.
They had a bunch of wind turbines that got hit by Hurricane Sandy. Every single one of them automatically shut off.
Down.
Every single one of them automatically came back on again.
So they got kind of overdrive
they get
control.
over it. Yeah.
Well, this is an interesting takeaway since up to 80% of the offshore wind resources globally are in deep waters, where traditional bottom-fixed installations are not suitable. There exists a great potential for floating offshore wind.
Yes, huge potential. Okay,
Moving
this
along.
is where we have this particular item coming up, the one with this picture.
You want to see the picture again?
You're allowed to put it up. If you like it, Tom, you can put it
It's
up.
a nice picture.
There it is. This is from Clean Technica.
The best performing electricity utility in the USA is also the world's biggest installer of renewables.
This surprised me. Again, I would have thought that the biggest installer of renewables would have been in China. But apparently in this particular case, this one is bigger than any single organization in China. Despite the current presidential regime's attempts to defend the coal industry, the U.S. is home to a utility breaking world records for renewable energy development, with 47 gigawatts of renewable capacity already built. NextEra plans to double its rate of install over the next few years, aiming for a total of 10.1 to 16.5 gigawatts in the period of 2017 to 2020.
Well, NextEra's boss man made a prediction, and I don't think this is crystal ball stuff. He predicts that it will be cheaper to install new renewables than to continue operating existing coal and nuclear plants by the early 2020s.
Yes.
That's not too many years from the future.
We've seen cases where the utility people have been saying that they already are cheaper in some
cases,
parts of the
certainly
world.
they are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
in India, parts of India, it is cheaper to get electricity from a new wind turbine than it is to get it from an old coal-burning power plant. And so
It's going to become more and more so.
yeah, absolutely.
The time is coming when coal-burning plants will just cease to exist.
Yeah, we have not hit the bottom of the curve of the reduction of prices of solar and wind. We aren't even close.
We're getting there, but every time we hit a new price, someone comes along with a lower one.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's moving along a little closer to home.
MassLive.com brought us this.
We've sort of talked about this before. This is a different
Yes,
aspect of it.
that's correct.
Maine Power Line, that's the state of Maine, will carry Canadian Hydro to Mass if Northern Pass fails to win New Hampshire okay by the end of March.
There
Coming
you
up
go.
quick.
Massachusetts regulators said that Central Maine Power's New England Clean Energy Connect will bring power from Canada to the Bay State if Eversource does not resolve its Northern Pass permitting problems in New Hampshire by March 27th. The 1,200 megawatt New England Clean Energy Connect would run through 145 miles of western Maine.
It's pretty remote country.
It's pretty remote country.
Yeah. Just to bring it back up to speed, though, what we've been talking about, Eversource that's the company, their 200-mile Northern Pass link going through mostly New Hampshire was blocked by the New Hampshire Site Evaluation Committee on February 1st, which I think was a surprise to everybody.
It certainly it was a surprise to me, and it seemed like it was a surprise to everybody. This particular project had just been approved only a couple of days earlier.
That's why it
by
was such a
Massachusetts.
surprise. Yeah.
And the people the regulators in Massachusetts said, "Well, let's put it through New Hampshire." And the regulators in New Hampshire said, "No, you won't." And but the next thing that happened, I shouldn't say the next thing, soon after that, the Central Maine Power New England Clean Energy Connect group, the group promoting that, said something that really kind of underscores what the meaning of this particular news item is. And that is, they said, we're going to build this line whether Massachusetts wants the power or not. So,
Well, I think they're looking ahead.
yeah, they are.
A, there's a lot of hydropower available in Quebec.
Right.
B, there's a big load down in Connecticut and Massachusetts
Yep.
and Rhode Island.
Yep.
So,
Although-
they're going to be connected one way or another.
Yep. Although I want to point out, this line is running, it's not running under a road. It's not running
I
under
don't
a
think there's
lake.
any roads in that part of Maine.
No, they're going to have to put roads in.
Yeah.
This line is going to mean clearing a piece of property that I don't know how wide those pieces of property are for transmission lines, but could they be 100 yards, do you think?
Certainly more than 50.
Yeah. All right, let's say 100 yards. They might be wider than 100 yards, I don't know. But they're clearing a piece of property that might be 100 yards wide by 145 miles long.
Significant piece of property.
Right. How many wind turbines do you think you could put into that piece of property?
I hadn't even thought of that, but
Enough
you
wind
could do a
turbines,
lot.
probably you could put a lot in.
Yeah.
And
And you wouldn't be spoiling anything. It's
No.
already spoiled.
yeah, and so I'm sitting here saying to myself, people object to wind turbines because of what you do, but to the land they're on. But these power lines,
Yeah.
they'd kill a lot more birds than the wind turbines would.
Well, I've been, you've been to the one up in Grafton there.
Yes,
And there's already a dual transmission line.
that's right.
How are you going to ruin the ridge line? The ridge line's already been ruined.
We need to address the fact that we've got a climate change problem. Do you know, Tom?
Well, there are people out there that are strongly opposed to wind.
Yeah, there are. And just this last week, I started looking at the statistics that I have been able to find on loss of wildlife.
Yeah,
Loss of
yeah.
insects. There's one study of
We've
that.
talked about it.
Loss of wildlife in general. Loss of seabird populations and so forth. And what I'm finding is that there's pretty consistently all forms of life, it seems, except maybe bacteria. We're seeing a reduction of about 2% per year worldwide.
Okay.
2% per year. In my lifetime,
That's a significant amount.
that
really.
means that
Doesn't
we've
sound
lost,
like much, but it
we've
is.
lost 80% of our wildlife in the last 70 years. We're losing 50% of our wildlife every 35 years. And if you track the reasons why, overwhelmingly, it traces back to fossil fuels. Overwhelmingly.
Wow.
I mean, if you think about plastics, where do plastics come from?
Yeah.
Fossil fuels.
Oil. Yep.
They come from oil. Now, there are other plastics. We don't have to use oil. And there are plastics that decompose.
Yep. We've been talking about some of them.
All right? But, and all of us, and if we look at that, and we say, okay, what would it cost to save the world? Well, by golly, when you do the equations, you discover you'd save a lot of money saving the world. So why aren't we doing it?
Because it's saving money for the wrong people.
That's my opinion. Absolutely. Okay.
Let's move along.
We are up
Sunday,
to Sunday,
February
February 18th. I have an echo. I am the echo. Okay.
With the U.S. pursuing fossil fuels, alternative and renewable forms of energy could be an even bigger boon to China.
Yes.
We've
and
talked about this
This is
before.
from Jefferson Public Radio.
got a
We have a
picture coming
picture. That picture is actually from,
That's not China, is it?
that is a Goldwind wind farm in China.
Okay. Looks like Nevada, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. While President Donald Trump's administration has moved to cut the U.S. government's clean energy budgets by up to 70%, China has been steadily moving in the opposite direction by exploring alternatives. And it comes back to this thing of climate change is a fraud is a hoax that was produced by the Chinese in order to get the United States to waste money on renewable power, and all of a sudden we discover that China, the perpetrator of this hoax, is spending not just twice as much money as we are; they're spending far more than that.
Interesting takeaway here.
Yeah.
China has greatly increased electric cars production, which we've talked about.
We
And
have.
is installing more wind power facilities than the other three top wind leaders combined.
Yes.
Which is the U.S., Germany, and India.
Yes.
India.
India.
The Chinese, now here we go, this is going to conflict with something we've already said today.
Yep.
The Chinese have even built the world's largest floating solar farm. No, that was wind that we talked about, floating wind.
That's right.
This is floating solar.
That's right.
When we've talked about that, west of Shanghai on a lake that used to be a coal mine.
Yeah. And if you want to see something distressing, look at where we've been getting our power in the past. There are coal mines that are twice the size of the island of Manhattan, strip mines.
Yeah.
And they're basically, let's take this rolling countryside in Ohio or wherever it is, move everybody
Mountaintop
off.
removal. Horrible.
Well, yeah. There was a strip mine in Germany along the Polish border where they were taking people out of medieval villages that had been built in the Middle Ages, and some of the medieval structures were
We've
still
talked
there,
about them.
and they were just raised.
Yeah.
And now the mine is a hole in the ground, 25 miles long, 5 miles wide.
Well, no matter what happens, when the coal is gone and when the oil is gone, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
What are they going to do when we run out of fossil fuel?
I'll tell you one thing.
I think we're going
If
to
you
be
look at the
doing
damage,
renewables first.
7 million people are killed by air pollution every year, according to the World Health Organization.
Yep.
That number of people is comparable to the number of soldiers and sailors who were killed every year in the Second World War. In the Second World War,
That's one way of
yeah,
kind of comparing it, isn't it?
in the Second World War, the United States lost something like 275,000 armed service personnel in 4 years. We lose in the United States 200,000 people every year to air pollution, according to an MIT study. And honestly, I think that study was too conservative.
Uh-huh.
But that's 400 people in Vermont every year. And that's 8 people in Brattleboro every year.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know people who are dying prematurely because of air pollution.
Yeah.
Are we going to do something
probably
about that?
live in an apartment house with them. There's a lot of people sitting in there with taking oxygen.
Yeah. Anyway, I suppose we
Well, we
should
come a little closer
probably-
to home here.
Okay, are we doing this Mass Live thing? EPA Scott Pruitt?
Yep.
That's what we're doing.
U.S. EPA Chief Scott Pruitt visits Northfield Mountain Hydro Facility on Valentine's Day.
Scott Pruitt visited a place I've actually been.
Yeah, yeah. There's a good picture in this article. It's a bird's eye view of Northfield Mountain.
Yeah.
And it's only right down the road. They got a nice park down there.
They do. You can go down and go snowshoeing or cross-country skiing or hiking or, whatever, depending on the season. Have a picnic. You can't swim in their reservoir, though.
No, you can't.
EPA Chief Scott Pruitt staged a quiet visit to Massachusetts along with Federal Energy Regulatory Commission member Neil Chatterjee. The two toured the Northfield Mountain Generating Station pumped storage facility in Northfield. The visit was one day before FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, finalized new rules to benefit energy storage facilities.
That's the one we just talked about.
Yep.
Well, you can certainly think of pump storage as a giant battery.
Yes, that's what it is. That particular station was built to store power from the Vermont
Basically
Yankee
from
nuclear,
Yankee, yep.
nuclear
Yankee,
power plant.
Yankee and Rowe.
Yep. So,
Well, I'll give you a quick rundown on the Northfield facility.
Okay.
It was built in 1972.
yep, I remember that.
Consists of a lower reservoir in the Connecticut River.
Yes.
Okay, water is pumped through an underground tunnel into a 300-acre upper reservoir at night. And
Yes.
you see that in the picture.
Yep.
And I've seen it. You've been there.
Yep.
It is released during a day when regional need for electricity is greater.
Yeah.
The water falls 1,100 feet through a sluice in a concrete powerhouse, turning 4 turbines.
Which were the biggest turbines on Earth at the time.
Were they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The biggest water turbines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we are up to Monday, February 19th, and
And
we
I
have a
think we got a
picture of
picture here.
wind turbines. We have lots of pictures of wind turbines today. This was not something I did on purpose. This
There
is
we
what
go.
came
Let's
up with.
look a picture. Little boy watching the wind
A
turbines in
blonde little
wonderment.
kid
huh?
said, a blonde little kid saying, "What are those?" Or maybe he's just saying, "Wow." Okay.
Meet the renewable superpowers.
This is from ecobusiness.com. A world powered by renewable energy will prize very different set of resources than we do today. Which countries hold the key to unlocking wind and solar power, and how will this shake up the world order? University of Swansea's Andrew Barron discusses some of the issues. You really have to go and read this article
I'm just going to say the same thing.
in order to know what it's saying, but basically
it's too complicated for us to
it's a
discuss.
very complicated thing, but the bottom line here, I think, is it's going to be a very different set of countries that are benefiting from this. The United
That's
States
exactly
can
what
benefit.
they're saying.
The United States can benefit, but we have to try to benefit. We
Yep.
can't just say, let's resurrect coal and make money. It's not going to happen.
Well, this is from the article. It's a switch from carbon to silicon, copper, lithium, and rare earth metals.
Yep.
And the countries that have them, and U.S. is one of them,
Yep.
will benefit.
The U.S. had the largest neodymium mine in the world, and it closed it because of EPA regulations. Now,
Okay.
they're reopening that mine. Closing it because of EPA regulations meant that it was more expensive to deal with the EPA regulations than the owners felt like they wanted to face.
But that's changed.
But that's changed. Neodymium is worth a lot of money now, more than it was. So they're reopening the mine. So I think it was neodymium.
There's a summary from the article.
Yeah,
Nothing lasts forever.
yeah. I have worked in a chemical factory with rare earth metals. Not the metals, actually, compounds from them. And I very much enjoyed that. I thought it was much more fun to work with gadolinium than it was to work with zinc or cadmium, that kind of stuff.
Well, neodymium is used to dye glass kind of a purplish color.
Yeah, it's also
And
used.
it's used to make full spectrum light bulbs because of that.
It's used to make magnets too.
Yeah.
And
yep.
that's where it
That's
becomes
where it's coming in.
really important, because its magnets are light. And when you're putting magnets in a generator at the top of a wind tower, you want
them light.
light magnets. Should we go on from
Yeah,
there?
let's move on.
Okay.
La Plata Electric Association grapples with an era of change.
This is from the Durango Herald, obviously in Texas. And it says Texas utility LPEA is locked into a contract for the next 30 years with its electricity provider, Tri-State. Tri-State generates most of its electricity by burning coal and only promises to increase prices. Expensive and dirty power is not what most LPEA members want.
It's an interesting article, and there's no conclusion. They're trying to figure out which way they're going to go
Well,
with it.
they're going to have, Tri-State has been bought off by at least one other utility that I know of.
Uh-huh.
And I think it cost, I think that was in Nevada, and the utility spent something like $75 million to get the contract voided. And the reason was because they would save money by spending that $75 million, which is basically $75 million they're getting just to avoid lawsuits.
Well, Tri-State has bet on coal.
Tri-State has bet on coal, and coal's
and
more
these guys
expensive.
saying we don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And so Tri-State is taking a position, probably, I would guess, that says, you want to void this contract? Pay us.
Yep.
And it's going to cost you tens of millions, scores of millions of dollars. For nothing. For nothing except taking...
Economics will determine what happens.
Yeah. Well, and they're likely to do that simply because it'll save a lot of money. As you said, economics will determine. Okay.
Next one's an interesting one coming
This
up.
is from IFL Science.
The U.S. Corn Belt is making its own weather pattern systems. Huh?
What? While the rest of the world is warming, one part of the U.S. is getting colder. The Corn Belt has seen summer temperatures drop 1 degree Celsius, which is 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, while rainfall has increased by 35%. According to research published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters, this time it is agricultural production, not greenhouse gases, that's to blame. Mm-hmm. The point that I'm making is, and of course other people have made this many times, we can have a profound effect on climate change by planting lots and lots and lots of trees. And if we do that in places where they aren't growing right now, it'll make a big difference.
You're not the first one to say that. But
No, I'm not
I'm
at
hearing
all.
that.
In fact, we've talked about that
And meanwhile,
on the show.
as we speak, they're cutting down a rainforest in Brazil.
And they're clear cutting areas of Georgia in order to burn wood pellets in Drax, which is a big, what had been a coal burning power plant in the UK.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one too.
Yeah, we will.
That's coming up.
And we have an item coming up now, in the meantime, from the Kansas City Star.
Kansas City Star. That's what I are. That was a song.
Okay.
Tell the EPA the economic cost of repealing the Clean Power Plan is just too high.
Yeah, let's get the message to Donald Trump and Scott Pruitt. You think that'll happen? Repealing the CPP would deny Americans the opportunity to create 560,000 jobs and add $52 billion in economic value. That is in addition to the more than 3 million clean energy jobs in the United States already. And this set of statistics comes from a nonpartisan environmental business group's report.
Well, more powerful hurricanes and wildfires, more frequent extreme weather events, and more asthma attacks and respiratory issues for our kids and seniors are likely what's in store if we repeal the Clean Power Plan.
Yes. As opposed to the biggest business opportunity we've got in the history of mankind.
It's a huge business opportunity.
It's crazy. And why are they doing what they're doing? Saying, let's not do the Clean Power Plan? Well, okay. How about a few statistics here, Tom? In 2015, I went looking to see who is big wind. And in the process of doing that, I looked to see who are big companies. And I found that there were 63 companies listed as having revenues in excess of $100 billion a year. Of those 63 companies, one was Koch Industries, 21 were in the oil and gas sector. I went back to the same list yesterday, and I found that there were 31 companies on the list. Half the companies were gone from that list, which doesn't mean that they're out of existence. It just means that their revenues are below $100 billion a year. Of those 31 companies, only Koch Industries isn't there, and only 6 were in the oil and gas sector. So the biggest area of drop was in the oil and gas and fossil fuel sectors. And those guys are hurting badly.
That's pretty interesting.
All right?
Yeah.
What do you suppose they would do? They're being threatened by renewable power and by people wanting to switch to renewable power and by people being concerned about climate change and by people being concerned by pollution. So what would you do? I shouldn't ask that because I know what you would do. But you'd do something very different. They're saying it doesn't matter. It's good for us. Pollution is good for us, you know,
Yeah,
like
right.
Scott Pruitt. Global warming will be good for us. And, you know, I'm sorry. I have an opinion about what should happen to such people, and it does involve iron bars. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, this is an interesting article.
Okay, this one from Clean Technica.
It is from Clean Technica.
How about it? I guess.
Transforming agriculture.
Yep.
Using crushed rock can slash pesticide use, increase yields, and promote carbon capture.
Okay, we have a picture here.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Let me try and find it.
Yep.
Here we
The
go.
Commonwealth, have I got the right one here? No, I haven't.
This is Clean Technica.
Yes, I know. They're both Clean Technica.
Oh.
Scientists
Oh,
at
that's
the
the next
University
one,
of Sheffield in the UK released a study that suggests using granulated basaltic rocks from volcanic eruptions could provide several positive benefits for agriculture and the climate. The benefits include improving soil fertility, cutting the amounts of pesticides needed, and increasing carbon sequestration.
Well, this apparently is something that they've known about for a long time, but nobody's really bothered to research it.
Yeah.
And it's called enhanced rock weathering. Okay, and the article says since farmers routinely add crushed limestone to their fields, all the infrastructure needed to distribute and apply crushed basaltic rock is already readily available.
It's already there.
So they could start this virtually instantly.
Yeah, and you know what basaltic rock is? First thing that comes to my mind is lava.
Yeah.
Granite is a basaltic rock.
Yeah,
There's
sure it
lots
is.
of different basaltic rocks.
Yeah, but granite is one of the chief ones.
Yeah.
Well, basaltic, I guess it's volcanic stuff.
Yep.
It's like you said, it's lava.
Yep. Okay. Our next item comes from Clean Technica also.
Now, this is an interesting article. This, to me, anyhow, very interesting. Graphene filter makes polluted water drinkable in one step.
One step. The Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, Australia's premier research organization, announced a new form of graphene it says can filter polluted water and make it drinkable in one step. It is a combination of graphene film and nanometer-sized channels that allow water to pass but block pollutants.
Well, a nanometer is a billionth of a meter. Yeah. It's not very big.
Not very big.
The process involves a new class of materials called metal organic frameworks. Never heard that term.
Yep.
Which may also be able to extract minerals like lithium and gold from the oceans. All that's needed is heat, graphene, a membrane filter, and a small water pump.
A small water pump.
So this is kind of low tech.
But it takes the sodium, it's actually the salt, out of salt
sodium
water.
chloride.
So it'll just pass, very little stuff aside from water. In fact, it sounds to me like the water that it produces is almost pure water. So
I think it is. And this graphene, we've talked about that too. It's a form of graphite, but it's very nano shaped.
It's weird stuff.
Yeah.
It's
really how would I say it? The cutting edge of technology.
yeah.
Right now.
It's stuff that didn't exist when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Our chemistry teacher and physics teacher, we had one guy who did both, taught us that you cannot take materials that are in solution out of solution with a filter.
This is proving them wrong.
And we are filtering, and this has been going on for years, we are filtering stuff that is in solution out. And that's been going on for a while now. Okay, should we move on?
I think we should.
Another item from
we got a
Clean
picture
Technica.
here,
We
too,
do.
don't we? Yeah, let's get the picture up
I
first.
get a lot of stuff from Clean Technica. I've got to write something for them.
That's sort of a
soon.
deceptive picture. It looks like it's a lot of pollution. But what you're really seeing is steam coming out of cooling towers.
Well, those aren't cooling towers, Tom, are they? Those look like chimneys.
I think the chimneys are skinny. Tall and skinny. Skinnier than that.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought those were chimneys, and that this
Yeah,
was...
maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Okay. Well, anyway, what do you got for a title?
Energy taxes are too low to avoid extreme anthropogenic climate change, according to an OECD study. And we're going to find out what OECD is very shortly.
The energy taxes that are currently in place at the world's top economies are not extensive enough to aid in mitigation of anthropogenic climate change to a large degree, a study said.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, the study from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development.
That's OECD.
I want to point out this is not a environmental organization. This is an economic development organization.
Is it UN or what?
I don't
Or
know.
just a consortium?
I think it's G20 or G something.
Okay.
looked at energy taxes in 42 different OECD, it's obviously not G20, and G20 economies. So it might be, or UN. But what they're saying is, actually, this makes sense. Think of it, you know, the material that I've seen says that the damage that's done by burning a gallon of gasoline in terms of human health, not environmental damage, just human health, is about $1.30 a gallon. So if you burn a gallon of gasoline, you're costing somebody $1.30 in medical problems.
Costing society $1.30.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying for it.
Right, and what they're saying is the taxes are just not enough to offset climate change. We do have taxes on gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have taxes that are anywhere near high enough.
That's exactly the point of this article.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, should we move on, Tom, or do you have more to say
Yeah,
on
no,
that?
we're coming toward the end of the show,
program.
so let's.
We are up to Wednesday, February 21st, and we have a picture here, which is not a terribly interesting picture, but you know, there it is for what it's worth.
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's solar and wind in the same picture.
Yeah, yeah.
This is about the South Australian election.
Yes.
75% of renewables are achievable with or without the Premier's target. That's kind of local Australian stuff.
It is, but
it's a good article.
75%, yeah.
There's a lot of pictures in it. It's kind of fun. So
Right.
look it up if you want.
The South Australian Premier has signaled to voters that Labor, the Labor Party, will continue its world-leading push into renewable energy by committing his government to a 75% renewable energy target by 2025. This is not that far away, and they're going to 75%.
75% in 10 years, or
Yep.
less than 10.
In, what, 7 years?
Yeah.
For the first time, a renewable storage target is included. The
Which is a good idea.
Yeah, the state is already close to eclipsing its current 50% renewable energy forecast, which it set in 2014.
Well, they hit 48.9. That's pretty close.
Pretty close, and I didn't notice in the article. Did you what the target date for that current target was? I think it might have been 2024. Might have been a 10-year target.
I think it's 2025, but
well, the new one.
the
old one.
the old renewable energy target
Yeah.
was set in 2014.
Yeah, but what was the target date that it was supposed to get to 20?
Oh,
50%?
I don't.
Well, whatever
I
it
don't think it
was,
mentioned.
they're already there.
Okay.
And this is not unusual for renewable energy targets, for somebody to say, oh, we're going to set this target, which is going to be 50% by 2025, and somebody will come along and say, you can't do that. It's just not possible. And then the next thing you know, they've already done it.
We've done it already, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is, again, Australian politics, but the Labor Party wants to do this. And their Liberal Party, which isn't liberal, doesn't want to do it.
It's liberal by their standards.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is. But liberal in Australia and the UK
Means
and
something
so forth
different.
means something very different than what it means in the United States.
Well, South Australia, which is a state, appears on track to go close to 75% renewable energy reliance with or without this target.
Yeah.
It's going to happen anyhow.
It's just going to happen. He's talking about having it as a target, but it's probably going to happen. And one of the reasons it's going to happen is because people in Australia are putting solar power and on their roofs and batteries into their garages and so forth at
in
a rate
almost astronomical numbers.
they're and part of that is because of high
costs of electricity.
Costs of electricity. But also,
Economics
South
dictates.
Australia is where that 100 megawatt Tesla battery was put.
Yep.
South Australia is where Tesla has said it will put 50,000 solar and battery systems into homes to produce a virtual power plant.
Yep.
And so I think maybe there's collusion going on here between Elon Musk and what is this guy's name? Weatherall?
Something like that.
I've
Very
forgotten.
close to it. I had it, but Jay Weatherill.
Weatherall.
Jay Weatherall, yep.
Jay Weatherall. There's collusion going on. This is a conspiracy. They are conspiring to save the world, and Elon Musk's putting a sports car into a rocket ship that's carrying it to Mars and back. Nah, it's just a
So when he gets
distraction.
there, he's going to have a car to drive around.
No, it's going to go up there, and then it's going to come back, That's what they say,
Oh, it's
and
coming
they're
back.
not going to land it.
So they're going to crash that nice car?
They're going to crash it. What I read recently was it could easily stay in orbit around the sun for millions of years. Somebody will find it 100,000 years from now and say, "What's that?"
Well, let's move along.
Okay.
We're going to be talking a little bit about Drax, aren't we?
We are, and this is from the Independent, which is British
British paper.
paper.
Total renewable power produced in 2017 could have supported the UK for the whole year of 1958.
The amount of renewable power produced in 2017 could have powered Britain for the whole of 1958, a report shows. Britain's output of wind, biomass, solar, and hydro grew by more than a quarter to 96 terawatt hours of power, according to the latest Electric Insights report from researchers at the Imperial College London in collaboration with Drax. You know, I
did look up Drax.
Yeah.
They're an international energy company.
Right.
They provide electricity in Europe, and in the U.S., they make wood pellets down in Georgia and Alabama
Which they
for
burn.
export to Europe.
Yeah, which they burn in their Drax power plant in
Europe.
Yorkshire. And they're clear cutting Georgia. They promised they would just use waste products, but they're
clear
instead of using waste products, well, they just said all American forests are waste, so we can cut it all down.
Well, I've been down in that part of the country driving through it, and
Yeah.
you go by some spots where it's clear that they're tree farms.
Yeah,
Well, every tree is the same size,
Yes.
and then you go for about 5 or 10 miles, and then everything is clear cut.
yes,
You go about for another 5 or 10 miles, and again, every tree is the same size.
yes. Yeah.
They've been doing it for years.
They have. I lived in the UK in 1962.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and you know, I was a kid, and we had a refrigerator, and our family was the only family around that had a refrigerator.
Okay.
They didn't have refrigerators.
Okay.
They didn't need refrigerators. Everybody had a pantry. The pantries were all on the north sides of the buildings that they lived in. And the pantry windows were typically left open at night, which meant that they were normally at 40 degrees or, you know, whatever. And if you bought the correct food, which meant that you know, if you got fish, you ate it the same day, unless it was it was pickled or something. But you know, the people bought food and so forth based on an idea that they were not going to be able to refrigerate it.
So that was part of their planning.
That was part of the planning. But on the other hand, we had a man delivering dairy products every second or third day. We had a meat man who came by. We had a fish man, and that was twice a week. Once a week we had a fish man. Every day the baker came. This was home deliveries. So you know, you'd hear a beep out there and go out and buy a cake. You know, anything you wanted was going to be delivered. And if you wanted sewing needles and thread, you'd say to the baker or whatever, listen, I need some sewing needles and thread, and my car
bring it
doesn't
the
work.
next time, huh?
Next time he came by, I'd bring it. You know, and he'd charge you for it.
Yeah.
But what he charged you for it was so similar to what you would have paid in Exeter or wherever you would have had to go, it just didn't matter. Okay.
We had a summer home in the Catskills, didn't have electricity.
Yes.
So we had an ice box.
Yes.
And every day the iceman came, or every other day, with
Yeah.
a big block of ice for the ice box.
We have one more item. You want to do it? From the Star Online.
Aha, this is our last item.
It is.
BP sees self-driving electric vehicles crimping oil demand. Duh.
In a benchmark annual energy outlook, BP forecast a 100-fold growth in electric vehicles by
That's
2040.
100-fold. That's not 100%.
That's 100-fold.
That's a lot.
Its chief economist, Spencer Dale, painted a world in which we travel much more, but instead of using private cars, we increasingly share trips in autonomous vehicles. It is the first report in which BP forecast a peak in fossil fuel demand. And you
is,
know
huh?
what? I looked at their figures and I said, these things are way off. They're way too conservative.
So it's going to be quicker than that.
Oh, yeah. Time to go, Tom.
I guess it is. Well,
Yep. Bye, everybody. Have a good week.